You've seen those great shows on HGTV that show you how easy it is to flip a property. On today's episode, we're excited to learn from Kyle Doney, who's been flipping homes full-time for about 10 years. Let's jump in so you can learn if it's as easy as they make it seem on TV.
Are you a working professional but struggling to balance the workload of your career, family, obligations, and preparing for your financial future? If so, this podcast is for you. You've spent years learning your craft, and now it's time to focus on your financial future. This podcast will teach you what you need to retire wealthy and happy. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Retire Wealthy and Happy podcast. We created this podcast to provide financial tips and tricks to help you build up your passive income, and also provide methods that you can use to protect your wealth so that you can plan a better future for yourself and your family. We're grateful to have this podcast sponsored by Monument Real Estate Capital. Monument Real Estate Capital, helping you retire 10 years early through real estate investments. On today's episode, we're excited to have Kyle Doney with us. A brief background about Kyle. He is the president of LVN Real Estate and has been since 2015. This is a real estate company based in Denver, Colorado. He's been involved in real estate investing since 2013. He's into motocross, biking, hiking, snowboarding, and likes road trips. He also served 6 years in the Air Force. Kyle, we appreciate your service to the country. A brief overview of what will be covered in today's episode. We're going to talk about fix and flips. We're going to talk about market selection and other real estate strategies, plus how you can build a successful team. Kyle, thanks for being on the show with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate the intro, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Kyle, I know I just gave a brief intro on you, but I'd love if you take a few minutes and share a little bit more about your personal story and kind of how you got to where you are today, if you're willing.
Yeah. So as far as entrepreneurship goes, I mean, I was in the Air Force till 2012, and I got done with that and I was in college at the same time as well. So I was active duty, then went to the reserves, did college, and got done. And I was like, what am I going to do? And started looking into businesses that I could buy. I figured out during my time in the Air Force that I didn't really like being told what to do. And so a little bit of a long 6 years doing that, right? Because it wasn't my cup of tea. I like to be the boss. I like to be in charge, and I kind of like to do my thing. And so, that was my real life work experience right there, my corporate job, if you want to call it that. And from there, I'm like, hey, I need to do my own thing. And so started researching. I had some money saved from being in the military, and I was like, what am I going to do next? I need to get a business going. Like, that was my mindset. And so I ended up buying a vending machine business, a healthy vending business, and moved. I was in North Carolina at the time, and moved from North Carolina out to Colorado and started this. I bought this business. I took over this business actually, and it was based out of Boulder, and I grew that, and I did that for about 5 years. And during the same time, I started getting into other businesses as well. And so I got into a wholesale business with electronics, and I got into real estate all pretty much in the same time frame, all in 2013. 2012, I started in the vending business, and then 2013, I started these other two as like actual businesses. And so I was busy. I had a lot going on, and it was fun, right? It was fun for me. I was in my, I was 25 when I started all this stuff, and just really figured out that I like hustling. I like flipping things. I like selling. And so I was selling snacks. I was selling phones. I was selling real estate. I was selling things, and that was fun for me. But that's how I got started in entrepreneurship in real estate as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those details. And even though the Air Force may have had some challenges, you probably learned some pretty good life principles in there too, as well, right?
Oh yeah, taught me discipline, and discipline is definitely an important thing. I didn't have any of that really before going in. Coming out of high school, going directly in there, wore my ass into shape really, and so it was a good thing for me overall, and set me in the right direction. And part of my work ethic, I would say, like my work ethic.
Well, and you're talking about owning several businesses. Like, you got to be disciplined to be running 3 different businesses. That's a lot of work. So I'm sure you're.
I did.
I'm sure. I'm sure you're very disciplined. So, Kyle, can you tell us what was it that made you wanted to get started in real estate investing?
I don't know. I always kind of had this interest in it, even when I was in college, and during that time in North Carolina, I was looking at houses. I was looking at condos. I was like, oh, I got this amount of money saved up, and what can I buy with this, right? And so I was always interested, reading on Bigger Pockets and reading articles, and just curious about it for years before I ever even started doing it. But never really took action. Never really took the steps to do it. I think I probably perceived it as a higher and barrier to entry than it really is or was at the time. Like I thought, oh, I gotta have all this money to do this and buy this property, and I gotta have credit, and I gotta have whatever, right? When that, we know that's not really the case. You can start this with bad credit and no money and all that. And so I didn't really get going. I had interest in it, and just it was kind of a one house at a time thing. But I'm not exactly sure like why did I just start doing it, but I think it's just like, this is cool, right? Like I liked it. And so, bought a house, and yeah.
When you started in real estate, did you have some like grand vision of what it would turn into, or you were just like, let's see where this goes?
Yeah, it's more like a side hustle. It's more like, let's see where this goes. So, like I bought my first house and house hacked before house hacking was house hacking. Just rented out some rooms to my friends, and did that, so that was kind of my start. And then the same year I bought a rental and rehabbed that. And it wasn't really like, hey, I'm going to start a business. That wasn't my mindset. It was more like, I just want to buy real estate and have these assets, start growing my wealth and have passive income. And it was more of, there was a vision of like what I wanted, right? Like I wanted to gain assets and passive income. I think was probably the main driver. Because I was really active in the other two businesses that I was doing. I was like, this is just a place to put money and have cash flow, right? Have money rolling in. So that was probably the vision initially, was just to do that. And then it just started going from there. And then it turned into what it's turned into over the years. But it wasn't like, I'm going to flip all these houses and be this big flipper and do all these things. Like I wasn't thinking that.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's kind of funny. I talk to a lot of people in the real estate space, and it seems like people that start real estate as like a side hustle somehow get sucked in, and they end up doing much more in real estate, probably because there's so many opportunities that you can be involved in real estate. But it seems like a common trend. Like you're like, oh, I'll just do a little bit in here, and then now you're running the whole real estate business, and so slippery slope.
It's addicting. It's addicting, man. Like when you with what I was doing in vending, like I got to sell a lot of snacks to make what I would on one flip or one wholesale or whatever, right? Like I got to sell a lot of snacks, And so when you get those paychecks in the real estate game, you're like, you know what? Like this is starting to make a lot of sense, right? And you just start doing more. I think that's pretty much how it goes, right? Like you just start to realize as it goes, like this makes sense.
There's a lot of money to be made. And just as a disclaimer, there's also money you could lose if you do it wrong. So make sure you're set up properly so that doesn't happen to you. So let's switch gears a little bit. And I want to talk about fix and flips, because you have a ton of experience doing fix and flips on your own. And are you also doing it with partners or anybody, or you do it strictly on your own?
I mean, it's mostly on my own, but I'll partner with people. I have I'm not partnering with a ton of people, but here and there, guys that I've known for years will bring a deal and say, hey, Kyle, I got this. Like, do you want to go in on it? It's like, yeah, let's do it. Right. But they got to bring value to the table. I have one partnership deal right now on a 5-unit condo conversion. Basically, we're flipping each unit and selling them individually. That one I have a partner on. Development, I'm doing some development. I have a partner there. And then pretty much most of everything else is on my own within my company.
Okay. So one of the things I'm really hoping to get out of our conversation today, Kyle, is what is really involved in flipping a property? Because our listeners might be watching those shows like I referenced on HGTV. They're thinking, oh, you can buy a property and flip it in 30 minutes because that's what they show you on TV. But you and I both know that's not really what it's like. So I was doing research on you before this call, and you had previously written an article called 5 Flipping 101 Tips. And I want to talk about what it is that really is involved with flipping so that somebody can understand like the actual time commitment that it takes for you to be successful in a flip. Do you want me to break that down, or
how much time you got?
Yeah. As much time as we need, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot to it. I mean, I can give you the rundown on it. I mean, the first thing is finding a deal, right? Like that's step one, find a deal. Well, how do you find a deal? It's networking, it's connections, and it's marketing. It's probably going to be one of those ways, right? Making offers. So in my company, we do a lot of marketing. And we do a lot of networking and connecting as well. So I would roughly, like we track this, roughly 30-ish% of our deals are just from connections that we have within the area. So that would be wholesalers, that'd be agents, that'd be whoever bringing us deals and saying, hey, I got this. Do you want to buy it? That's about 30% of our deals. The other 70% it's from our marketing. And so we're sending out a lot of marketing, all the things that everybody knows about. We're texting, we're calling, we're mailing, we're doing all the things, right? We're getting online leads. Those leads come in, and then we have sales guys. They work those leads and they get it to a point where they put it under contract and they figure out, hey, this is a deal. And so that's step one. That's how it works in my business. And when you're starting out, you gotta find deals. Step one, find the deal.
Before you go on, Kyle, that's a huge percentage.
Yeah.
Over 2/3 of your deals you're finding on your own. That's what you're saying?
From marketing. Yeah. Yeah. The other third would be from wholesalers and agents. Network. We call it self-generated stuff that we're not spending money to get necessarily. It's you bring me a deal and I buy it. That's a self-generated deal.
Okay. So if somebody's going to be successful in flipping, they have to be able to find the deal. And a lot of that is with marketing that you're doing, or they would have to be doing on their own, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Picking up the phone, talking to people, making offers.
Okay. So what's step two?
Step two is due diligence. It's underwriting the deal and making sure it works. And so for us, what that looks like initially, we're one of the sales guys is either going there or a project manager is going there. So we'll get it under contract. A lot of times we'll get it under contract based on the comps, the comparables. And so we know, hey, this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in wherever Denver is worth $500,000. And the seller's asking $300,000, and we know we're going to put roughly X dollars in it. So let's just say we estimate, okay, we're going to put $60,000 in this house. Well, we'll estimate that. We'll figure out, hey, this meets our criteria of buying as a flip. And so we'll put it under contract at that time. And then that's the start of the due diligence, basically, where we'll send out our project manager and he'll go walk it and he'll look at it and he'll go, it needs boom, 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 boom. And I roughly think it's going to be this amount of a rehab. And then we'll see, hey, is that in line with what we initially thought? Or is there something that we didn't hear about from the seller initially that needs done? Like, let's say sewer line, they got water backing up, or there's mold, or it needs a roof, whatever, right? Like things we didn't know about. We'll say, okay, well, we thought this was a $60K rehab, but really it's an $80K because all your mechanicals are 30 years old and we're going to have to replace them.
So how do you come up with
step one?
How do you come up with those numbers, Kyle? Do you just have that experience, or do you bring in contractors to give you bids and stuff?
For us, I mean, we've done hundreds of flips, right? So I can look at pictures and pretty much know what it's going to cost, for the most part, unless it's something I can't see. But if you're starting out, I would say you'd want to bring in a contractor. You'd want to bring in somebody that knows what they're doing and can give you some numbers, give you some bids. But for us, like we figure out that number. We get a rough idea, and then we build out a scope of work and really define it and get down to, the exact number that we're trying to hit.
That makes sense. Are we still on step 2, or are we moving to step 3?
We'll go to step 2. Step 2 in the article you're referencing is having a plan. And so this is where we'll put together the scope and we'll put together like the exact plan we're going to do. How crazy are we going to go in this house? Are we going to do a full gut rehab, or are we kind of just sprucing it up and putting it back on the market? Are we selling it as is, or is it to the point where it needs so much work that we don't want to deal with it and we're just going to wholesale it to the next guy that wants to deal with it? That's kind of step 2, figuring out what is the plan, how are we doing this deal? Sometimes we'll hold them as rentals as well. We buy rentals. And so we'll look at it and say, yeah, this makes sense. This pencils as a rental. Like, this is going to be a rental rehab, like a kind of like a make ready, you would call it, right? Like just get it tenant ready, and then we'll rent it. So step 2 would be making a plan and figuring out exactly what's going to happen there. Step 3 would be hiring the contractor. Who's going to do the work? What's the timeline? What's the budget? Agreeing on a price, getting the paperwork in place, getting a contract in place, and really like putting it in motion pretty much. Like we're good to go. So finding the contractor, step 3, paperwork, step 4. And so putting all that stuff I just talked about in place and signing and agreeing like, hey, you're going to do this rehab for X dollars. Here's exactly what you're going to do. And we make that very detailed. We have a really detailed scope of work. And so we map out exactly what it's going to cost. And if the contractor has a change order and needs to say, hey, this wasn't in my scope, I need more money. Well, it's all agreed upon. It's all mapped out. And we've done this the wrong way. Like I think one piece of advice for people getting into it is don't make handshake deals. Really, really write this stuff out and define it. Really define it, because you could talk to the contractor and say, yeah, here's the deal. You're going to do this, this, and this, but you didn't write it down. You didn't sign. You didn't agree. You didn't put a contract in place. And then they come back to you and they're going, actually, you know what? I told you 40, but this, and this reason, now it's 60. And you're like, come on, man. Like we said 40, right? And now you got a dispute. Now you got an argument. So we try to nip that in the bud ahead of time and really, really be dialed in on what they're going to do and have those agreements in place, right? We don't want to deal with that on the back end. And if there's a change order, things come up, you open up a wall and all of a sudden, a bunch more work comes up, then we do a change order paperwork and we agree, like, here's the amount that the change order is going to cost. We sign it, we send it over in DocuSign, and it's like, here it is, right? So we're not willy-nilly about this. This is a business. We run it like a business. We have the paperwork in place, and we try to keep people trust, but have that paperwork on the back end, right?
Well, I appreciate that you said you treat it like a business, because that's what it's sounding like, is that you have plans, you have contractors, you're running the numbers very detailed. You talked about marketing, like that is a business. So I'm glad to hear that you're running it that way. I wanted to ask you, when you're doing a flip, can you help the listeners and myself understand how much time would you say it takes to do one flip? And obviously I'm asking a general question, but hopefully you can kind of break it down a little bit.
I mean, that's super dependent on what the work entails.
Well, it's just an average deal. Like,
I would say an average deal, we're in and out. I mean, I know this because we track it. We're in and out, and it used to be 4 months. We're more on like the 5-month stage now, but somewhere between 4 and 5 months, we're in and out. So that's between buying and selling. The rehab itself, it depends on the extent of the rehab. It could literally be 2 weeks, or it could be 2 or 3 months. It depends on how much we're doing in the house. There's other factors too. I mean, we have one right now that we just bought that it has to be fully permitted. It's a firehouse. It had some issues with fire, and so it's already condemned, right? And so the city already knows about it, and so we got to go there and we got to pull permits, and that's a process. So that's going to add to that time frame. That one will probably take us, I would guess that house probably takes us somewhere between 6 and 9 months to be fully done, like exit it. The rehab will probably take 3 or 4 months, but just all the fluff time in between of getting permits, getting everything that the city wants, all the inspections, all the things that they're going to say, no, you did this, but we want this. That one's going to take us longer. So it's highly dependent on the scope of work and what's involved in the rehab.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that flipping can be very enticing for people because in theory, you can make really good returns on your money, right?
Yeah.
But would you say, and I'm asking this maybe too broadly, but would you say that flipping is an active or a passive investment strategy?
Very active.
Very active.
Very active.
I mean, you're talking 4 to 5 months, and that's probably a fairly heavy 4 to 5 months, right? Like you're dealing with contractors and whatnot, probably almost on a daily basis, or at least every other day, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I would say on a daily basis, phone communicating or dealing with materials. We're dealing with somebody one way or another, typically on a daily basis. As far as showing up, a project manager would show up generally 1 time a week, sometimes more. If we're getting near the end of the project, they might be there 2 or 3 times a week to get it finalized and everything. But generally they're showing up at these projects once a week and checking in, seeing what the status is, and pushing on the contractors.
So a lot of time commitment is the point. So thank you for sharing those details. I want to know your opinion. Would you say that flipping has gotten easier or more challenging over the last couple of years?
It's a tough question to answer because the more of these that we do, the better that we get, right? Like the more we do, the more our process dials in because we've learned all the mistakes. We know the pitfalls, we know where the gotchas. And so we continue to get better at flipping. So in theory, like it should be getting easier, but at the same time, we're doing more. And so we have more projects all over the place and we have a heavy workload. And so the process itself, I would say we're pretty dialed in, but we're always tweaking. We're always figuring things out and trying to get better. I guess to answer the question directly, I would lean towards it's getting harder. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think some of it is here in Denver, labor is a big issue. And so finding good workers that work for a reasonable price is tough, right? Like you can find great guys, but you can't make it work in flipping because there's just not enough room, right? There's not enough room to hire that tier one GC that makes your life really easy because they want too much money, right? And so we just don't have the margin to do that. We won't make any money. And so we're kind of working at the lower scale of contractors, right? They take more management. They take more time. They're tough to find and you got to be on them. Like you really got to be on them. But that's how we can make it work, right? Like we have to compress in all areas, right? Like we need to get a great deal. We need to get materials at a good price. We need to get the contractor's labor at a good price, and we need the quality to be high. That's hard to do. It's hard to do all that, right? Like you're asking a lot you're squeezing all ends and trying to get this awesome product so that it sells on the market and people are interested in it. And so I guess I would say it's always been hard. It continues to be hard. It's probably getting a little bit harder just because holding costs are going up with where rates are at now. And so it costs more to sit on these houses. Labor's more, materials are more. There's a lot of people in this business. There's a lot of people gunning for these houses, right? So it's highly competitive. The margins, I'm not going to say it's slimmer because we try to buy at the same margins, but as always, we try not to push it and make our margins super slim. We have set criteria, but it's just highly competitive, right? And so you just got to be dialed on all ends. And it's a constant work in progress. We're constantly looking for new contractors. The hunt is always on. If we're doing more projects, that means we need more guys. It's a tough business. It's a tough business.
Sounds like it's a lot to manage. And with that, there's a lot of places you could mess up, which could cost you heavily financially, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. You get the wrong guy in there. Like that's why you got to be on him. You get the wrong guy in there, you don't check on him for couple of weeks, like you might be tearing out all their work and redoing it, right? Now you're buying more materials and hiring the next guy, holding costs, all that. So
I've had experience with that, so I can relate. So Kyle, another opinion question from you. What do you think the next 5 years or so looks like for flipping? Do you think it'll get more difficult? Do you think it'll get easier? I know interest rates have impacted us a lot. So
there's so many economic drivers to this, right? Like what are interest rates going to do? Lucky for us, like we've been in this period where things are pretty great as far as selling, like over the past number of years, like you could totally screw up and still come out ahead because of the appreciation, how rapidly prices were going up. And so like, all right, yeah, you blew your budget 20, 30 grand, but like you still killed it, because your ARV is 50 higher than what you thought it was going to be. And so in this environment, the getting's been good, right? Like it's been pretty great, but that's changing, right? Like there's less inventory, less people are selling because they're holding on to their 3 or 4% interest rate or whatever, 2.5, whatever that is, right? Like, do they really want to sell their house and upgrade and now pay 8%, 7% or whatever it is? I think for that reason, it's going to get harder unless rates start to go back down. Just less people are selling. Houses are less affordable, right? Like you're going from 3% to 7, 8, whatever the rate is now. It's less house you can buy. So I think it's getting harder, overall.
Well, Kyle, maybe you and I should call our local governments and tell them to lower the interest rates.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, right? Because they do that, and then it's like it's booming again, and things are flying off the shelf, and there's less opportunity, right? So I don't know. How do you fix that, right?
We need a balance.
Yeah, we're definitely not balanced. That's for sure.
So Kyle, thank you for sharing those comments. I want to switch topics slightly and talk about market selection, because I know you guys are based in Colorado. You do a lot there, but I also understand that you've added several other markets to your operations. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are in some other markets. Yep. We cover a lot of ground of Colorado, mostly we call it the Front Range, so mostly like Denver Metro. But we hit we do projects up in northern Colorado. We go up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, which actually isn't very far away. It's about an hour and a half from Denver. So we do stuff in Wyoming. And then we were in North Carolina and Little Rock, but we pulled out of Little Rock. Just wasn't a market that worked for us. North Carolina, I had a partner there that moved to Texas, to Austin. And so now we're doing stuff in Austin, Texas as well. And so our main markets are Colorado, Wyoming, just one specific city in Wyoming, Cheyenne, and then Austin, Texas area.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but what pushed you to look outside of just the Denver market, since I know you're local there?
Wyoming made sense just because it's kind of an extension of northern Colorado, really. Like it's close. Like we'll go within, I would say, about 2 hour radius of Denver. And so that's within 2 hours. And so we'll go there. So that just made sense, right? It's close enough that we have contractors we can send up there and we can manage it. Going into Texas, that was all based around a partnership. And so I have a partner there. And so we have boots on the ground, and I wouldn't be there otherwise, just being Colorado and Wyoming. So that's really it.
That makes sense. Have you had any major challenges investing out of state?
I would say no at the moment, just because I have people there. I think if I didn't have boots on the ground, it'd be a lot more challenging. I think probably the biggest challenge would be not having a strong grasp on the market there, like Texas in particular. I've never lived there. I'm not from there. I don't know all the little pockets and the nuances. Colorado, I've been here 10 years in this business. And so I know, you tell me a neighborhood and a house price, and I probably know if it's a deal, right? Like I know all the little pockets. I know the neighborhoods. I know all the players. I know everybody, right? So that is an advantage from somebody else coming in here and trying to do business that would be out of state. I think that's the biggest obstacle.
Absolutely.
Connections.
So I'm just summarizing so far what we've learned today. You're saying that you should run your real estate operations like a business. Having partners in markets, boots on the ground is extremely important because you can probably operate better, and understanding the local market really well helps you to know if you've got deals or not, right?
100%. Yeah. Like that stat I told you earlier about 30% of my deals are self-generated. That's Colorado only. That doesn't happen in Texas. It's zero in Texas. That's because I don't have a network. I don't have a good network there. Like that takes time to build.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, maybe in the future. If anybody from Texas is listening to this, hit me up. Austin area.
There we go. I like that. So just a reminder for our listeners, today we're talking about fix and flips. We've talked a little bit about market selection. We're going to talk about other real estate strategies and also how to build a successful team. So Kyle, let's talk briefly about other real estate strategies. You mentioned this a little bit previously, but let's talk about it again. You said that when you're looking at projects, you first look at it through the lens of a flipper, but you also might consider either wholesaling it or keeping it as a rental. What is the main things that help you determine what you're going to do with a project when you're looking at it?
Yeah, I would say I would call myself a pretty strategic or creative investor, and so I don't pigeonhole myself into one thing. I don't look at everything through the lens of just a flipper. I've done a lot of different things. We actively buy rentals, and I've been doing that since 2013, right? So I've been doing that 10 years. I lend, so I'll lend and partner on deals in that sense. I'll lend money on deals. I've developed and still am developing, and I'm learning that game. I'm new to that game, so I'm not the guy that you come to for advice there, because I'm learning it, but I get it and I'm getting better at it. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. We do creative stuff, and so we've taken properties subject to. We've done owner financing deals where we finance buyers. We've done a little bit of everything, and so I think I'm well versed in how to look at a deal and monetize it, and I think that really helps. And so I don't just look at it through one lens. I look at it through a lot of lenses, and it's like how do we make this deal work, and what can we do here? And I'm open to all those different ways. It's fun for me.
That's awesome. So I would add to that in real estate specifically, there's thousands of ways you can make money as an investor, right? And you are pointing out here that you are specializing in several of those, which is awesome. You've got a lot of experience in that. And because of that, you're able to take advantage of more situations because you know how to analyze things from multiple different perspectives. And that makes you make the best decision on what you can do with a specific project that's brought to you, right?
Yep. And it's got to be creative. I mean, they don't all work for one strategy. That's for sure.
You probably didn't start by doing all those things, right? You were focusing on building up one category maybe and then getting better at each one over time.
Yeah. I mean, it started with rentals and rehabbing. I mean, so even if I wasn't flipping, I was doing rehabs, which leads to flipping, right? So I was buying property, rehabbing it, and renting it. Same thing if I would have flipped it, right? I'm learning how to rehab and make a property, improve a property's value. But that's where I started. The rest of the stuff is just over time, right? Like I've just been interested in learning. I have a thirst for knowledge. And so I've been in the same mastermind for 5 years. Investor Fuel, shout out to them. Like that's been a great group to be a part of and lots of good connections and knowledge there. I've gone to a lot of different one-off events, just learning about how do I invest in my IRA and my 401k. Like I'm super, super into that. Like it's super fun to me to try to do these deals and not pay tax, right? Like how do I not pay tax on this? Because if I don't pay tax, I can grow substantially. I like that type of stuff. And to learn how to do all that, you got to educate yourself. So just going to events, going to these one-off events, spending the money, hiring mentors, coaches. I mean, I've done that since I've started, and that's propelled me upwards.
In a couple previous episodes, we've talked about how the system teaches people to like keep their head down and not work with other people because it's considered cheating if you're like copying somebody else. But you're talking about being in a mentorship program. We've talked about that in other episodes, that really putting in the time and investing in yourself by building that network is extremely important in wealth creation because you surround yourself with people that have done it before you or are can give you other ideas to help you grow at the same time. So I appreciate you sharing those thoughts about being in the mentorship or in your mentorship groups. So Kyle, I know you've got some experience in wholesaling. We've talked about wholesaling in some other episodes, so let's not go too deep into it, but just real quick, will you tell us what wholesaling means to you?
Yeah, wholesaling to me is locking up a property at X price and selling it for Y price. So we lock it up at, let's say, $100,000 and we go find a buyer to buy our contract for $120,000. We never close on it. We make a $20,000 spread and we move along.
And you've been doing that for quite a while, right?
I have.
So the main thing I want to pull from this conversation is what challenges or opportunities are you seeing in the wholesaling space right now? Because I know we've had a lot of changes. COVID affected us, interest rates. Would you say it's different now than it was 5 years ago?
I would say it ebbs and flows. Sometimes people, like when there's less deals to be had, like right now, there's just not a lot of inventory. People are willing to pay more and they're hungry for deals. Anytime that there's some type of economic change, like when interest rates started going up, everybody got scared. When COVID happened, everybody got scared. And so, wholesaling was harder. And for us, that meant more opportunity because we actually buy stuff as well. And so we were able to scoop stuff up off of wholesalers for cheap. During COVID it was great. So it ebbs and flows. It depends on, during those 5 years, there's a lot of different change on how motivated people are to buy wholesales. So sometimes again, it's good and sometimes it's slow and people are having to take less for deals.
I love how you say ebbs and flows because if you don't know this, real estate goes in cycles and the cycles are impacted by many different things and certain types of real estate investing strategies work better in some cycles than others do. So it's important to understand what it is you're focusing on and how that is impacted by what's happening in the current cycle. Would you agree with that, Kyle?
100%.
I want to talk briefly. I know, switching subjects a little bit, I was looking, you recently did a mobile home tear down and rebuild, right? Or you're working on that right now?
Yeah, we did it. We did it and completed it. That was the first one that we've ever done.
And I wanted to ask you about it because I'm curious. I don't know anybody else that's been doing that. So was there something specific about that deal that made it make a lot of sense, or why did you go that route?
Honestly, I just wanted to learn it. And so a wholesaler brought me a lot and was like, hey, I got this manufactured home. He knew that I bought in this area. It was like a out of town area, like where not a lot of people buy. And so I looked at it and, he was kind of pitching it as a fixer upper. And it was a scrape. Like we weren't going to be able to flip it. Like it was destroyed, right? Like it was just done. So the lot was at a great price and it had water and sewer already there, right? So we didn't have to bring that in. So it was like plug and play pretty much. And so we just tore it down and bought a Clayton Homes manufactured house, poured a foundation, built a garage, put the house on it and sold it. And again, like really, I just did it because I want to learn the process. And at some point I want to be able to do that on a larger scale. If I find let's say 20-acre piece of land, I want to be able to look at it and say, okay, yeah, I know I could do this. I could put whatever X amount of, let's just say they're acre lots. I could put 20 homes on this and I can sell them for this and it's going to cost me this. Like I just want to learn the game. And so that's why I did that deal. And it was a learning experience for sure.
Well, since you did it as a learning experience, is there anything you could share with our listeners about what you would do differently next time?
Everything just costs more than you think. So I would say that we made money on the deal, but it wasn't smooth. It definitely wasn't smooth. And that's just because we didn't know the process very well for doing these and for the city that we were working with. I guess the one piece of advice is just if the home costs, let's say $120,000, well, it's going to cost you a lot more than that to put the home on the lot and do the deal. Like there's just a lot of other things that come up. So really just have a pretty big budget and have a good spread if you're going to do it. Like, especially if it's your first time, like make sure you have a fat spread or you're probably going to lose money because there's a lot of things that you don't think about going into a deal like that. And they just continue to come up. And so it's different than a flip where you're just kind of coming in, you're doing it and you're good. There's a lot of coordination with the city and getting approvals and things got to be a specific way. And there's just stuff that we didn't think about going into it that we're like, oh crap, we got to do this. And it's going to cost us this, right? Just takes longer and costs more than you think.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those thoughts. It seems like real estate, there's a learning cost. And you can either pay it on your own, like you're talking about, or sometimes it's worth it to find like a partner or a joint venture situation and give them some of the ownership in the deal so that you can have it be successful from the beginning. Obviously, you'd want to be partnering with somebody who has more experience than you and can help you get it to the closing table. Partnerships in themselves have some other challenges, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But would you agree that there's a lot of learning costs when we're talking about different real estate strategies?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We got hit with like the dumb tax, learning the process. I think, on that particular situation, like had we hired, there's companies out there that do A to Z on putting manufactured home on a lot. So like they would literally do everything for you. And we didn't do that. We did it all ourselves, right? So we hired all the subs for grading and for hooking up plumbing and for electric. And we hired all the different subs and managed all that ourselves. Had we just hired like the company that's all they do, they put manufactured homes on lots, we likely would have saved a lot of time and a lot of money. So I think the guys that do it over and over and over again, like they know the process, they do it at scale, and they would have made our lives a lot easier. We kind of went at it the hard way and did it all ourselves. And so it just costs us more overall. So I guess that would probably be the tip. If you're going to do a manufactured home build for the first time, go find a company that does it for you and hire them, and then follow along the process that they did before you try to do it yourself and do all the whole process on your own.
Kyle, I love how transparent you're being right now, because a few minutes ago you were telling us about your flip business, which you've been doing for many years. And you were saying that it's almost super smooth now. You can look at a couple pictures and say, I know how much this is going to cost, and you're scaling up your business. But then you're also talking about doing something different. It's similar, but different. And you're having to go through the same learning curve just because it's a niche of its own, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so many other ones out there in real estate, right? So it's always learning. Just because you know one thing doesn't mean you know the next. Like real estate is pretty diverse and deep. There's a lot of different things to get into.
And you can generally find more success if you focus on one or two of them. Would you agree with that as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. But at the same time, for me, like I want to try these other things out because I want to see if it's a fit. I want to see like, okay, if I do that manufactured home build and I learn a bunch of stuff and we keep doing a couple more, like it might open the door to some big other department, I guess, of our business, I would call it, or division, right? Like it could be a whole new thing. And so for me, I like trying those things. I'm focused on mostly flipping and rentals, but I like trying other things, and because you never know where it's going to go. I mean, we're doing the same thing in commercial right now. We've been buying commercial property the past couple of years and learning that game as well. And again, like whole different animal, whole different set of things that you have to think about and know about and be versed in. And it takes time. And so for me, I like to dabble in these other asset classes of real estate because I want to learn and I want to see where it takes me and where it goes.
Just adding to that, Kyle, you're very smart. You're doing a lot of great things. I would say to our listeners, Kyle's not doing all of these from day one. He's picking one, learning it, and then picking another one, learning that. Because if you tried to pick 5 or 6 and start them all at the same time, you're probably failing for sure. So Kyle's a good example of continuing to learn, but doing it in a good order. Kyle, I want to also talk about your real estate business and how you've gone about building a team, because I understand you may have had some interesting experiences getting to that point. I'm curious if you have any advice to our listeners about how to go about building partnerships the right way.
Yes, as far as like partnering with somebody on a deal, not hiring somebody, like just partnering, whatever, 50-50 or whatever. Right. Yeah. I mean, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. Anything you would consider a partnership. Cause maybe I read wrong, but it looked like in a previous story, you had some painful experiences with partnerships, or did I read that wrong?
No, you read that right. For sure. I have. That was early on when I got into flipping. I partnered with this guy that I thought was better than he was, right? Like I thought he had more experience, had more going on, and really it kind of just turned out that he was mostly a crook and didn't know what he was doing, and kind of just like had a perceived image, but the image wasn't the reality. And so I learned a lot of hard lessons with that, because I was mostly, when I went into that partnership, I was trying to scale. I was trying to do more flips. I was trying to just do more, right? And grow the business and get bigger. And so I saw this guy that was getting deals, and I'm like, oh, he knows what he's doing. I'm going to tag along with him. And we went into 3 deals like right off the bat. And I didn't vet him out. I didn't vet out his business. I didn't vet out him very well. I didn't vet out his partners, the other people he was working with. I just didn't do a good job of digging in on him and understanding really who is he and where is he at in the business and what does his financials look like and all that stuff. And it turned out really not great, right? Because I was red flag number 1, like I was the money guy, right? Like he had no money in it. I had all the money in it. So like, what was his motivation, right? Like he had no skin in the game, So when I partner with people now, like I want skin in the game. I want them to have money in the deal. I want them to bring something to the table that either I don't have or that makes sense for me to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you whatever percent of this deal, whether it's 50% or 30% or whatever it is. Like you're going to have skin in the game. You're going to have some type of benefit to me of doing the deal, because I don't need to do the deal with you. So if you want to do the deal together, you're bringing something to the table. That wasn't the case on that first partnership.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate you sharing that experience. I'm sure it was painful to go through. Do you have any other comments you'd add about how people can go about finding the right people for their team or for their partnerships?
Yeah, as far as partnerships, I mean, again, it's like, what are they bringing to the table? I think if you're looking to partner with somebody, let's say it's a flip or a rental, like, okay, are they bringing the deal? If they bring the deal, then what does that mean for you? Like, what is your role? Why are they bringing you the deal? Are you doing the rehab? Are you bringing the money? Like, what is your role? And why does it make sense to partner with them? You got to identify that and figure out, like, does this make sense or not? Again, like, I like to see them have skin in the game. I like to see them have money in it. Knowing their background, what have they done? Where are they at in the business? Who knows them? Who knows about them? Like, you got to look into them a bit, talk to other people and figure out, what have they done? Who are they? Who knows them? Who can vouch for them? You got to vet them out. And so as far as partnerships goes, like if you don't know the person and you don't know their background, you really need to dig into who they are and what they've done. And then you got to define what is your role? Why are you two coming together? What are they going to do and what are you going to do? And you need to define that, get that on paper, get an agreement in place, and spell it out. Hey, I'm bringing 50 grand. You're bringing 30 grand because you brought the deal. I'm going to manage the rehabs. You're going to manage the tenants or whatever it is. You got to define all those little pieces and make sure you're on the same page before you put the money in, before you move forward. Define everything. That's how it's going to go the best if you have all that up front.
And like you said with your
partners.
And like you said with your contractors before, you probably want all that in writing, right?
Exact same thing. Everything in writing. I'm not saying you have to hire an attorney, but if you need to hire an attorney, spend the money, right? Like it's better to spend whatever, let's call it $2,000 to get that agreement in place than to put your 50 or your 100 grand in and then be fighting to get your 50, 100 grand back, right? Yeah. Like you gotta spend the money up front and spend the time up front to have these things in place so it's not painful later.
And obviously business partners are not the same as being married, but you do tend to get into some of these partnerships or relationships where you can be partners for several years. I mean, maybe with the flips, it's not as long, but if you're doing long-term rentals, like you could be several years into a project where you have to work well with that person. And if it doesn't go well, like you're saying, you could get into a lot of legal battle that isn't worth it. So great points, 100%. Kyle. Thank you for giving that advice on how to set up a partnership correctly from the beginning. Kyle, we're coming up on our hour here. Is there anything that you were hoping to cover in this podcast or questions you were hoping I would ask you that we haven't gone through yet?
No, I think we went through a lot. I'm an open book. I'm open to talking about anything. If you have anything else, let me know. And for the people out there listening, I try to be a great communicator. If somebody hits me up and they have a question or want to, connect and chat, I'm open to that, and I'll try to get back to you in a timely manner and help people out. So, yeah. We
appreciate that, Kyle. And we're going to put all your information in the show notes as well, so people can reach out to you. Kyle, this is the final four questions we have to ask everybody on our show. The first question for you today is, what is your favorite business book?
I'm going to say that I don't necessarily have a favorite business book. I don't have one that I've read 7 times. There's books that I've referenced back and books I can think of that were really helpful. One that comes to mind would be The Road Less Stupid. That's a really good book. Makes you really think about your business and what you're doing. And so I'd recommend that one to everybody. It's a good book, and it's one that you can kind of just flip open to any page and get value out of it. Like you don't have to read it in chronological order. Like you can open it up and take notes and whatever. That's a good book.
I've never even heard of it, but I really like that title. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, The Road Less Stupid. I think it's Mark Cunningham, I think, is the author.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Second question today. Kyle, tell us what brings you happiness?
For me, I like a challenge and I like growth. And so I like building this business. I like the daily things that come up. And sometimes it's like I'm pulling my hair out, and other times I'm clicking my boots, right? So there's ups and downs, but it's fun for me growing this business. And so it makes me happy when I see the final product of whatever we're doing. And I just like being in the game. And so that'd kind of be my business answer. As far as like personal, I love 2 wheels. I love biking. And so I do a lot of biking. I like to be outside and in the mountains. I'm in Colorado, and I definitely live the Colorado lifestyle. I got a travel van, and so I like to take road trips, ride mountain bike, ride motocross, and just be outside. That makes me happy.
That's awesome. And I like that you're so much into growth. It's obvious with what you're doing and the experience you shared with us that you're doing a great job at that. Kyle, tell us what your future retirement looks like.
I thought about this, and I don't think I'll ever retire. I think I like making deals. I'm a deal junkie. I like the game. And, I know guys that are in their 70s and plus, and they're still doing deals. I think that'll morph into a different type of deal making. Like I'm already doing some lending, and I could see myself going to more of that space where I'm bringing capital to deals and I'm lending to guys, and more of like an advisory, like, hey, young buck, like, here's why here's why you shouldn't do this deal, or yeah, here's the money to do this deal, and I think it's a good one. And I could see myself more in that role as I get older and want to be less active. Right now, it takes a lot of my time and energy to run this business, and I think eventually I'll want to take a backseat role, but still be involved in deals and real estate. So I think that's how it'll evolve, my guess.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Kyle, what do you think is the best way to give back?
Yeah, for me, just doing stuff like this, right? Like putting out information. I'm not a guru. I don't sell coaching, and I don't do any of that. But I love to talk to people. I love to help. When young guys come to me for advice, I like to give them advice. It feels good to help people out and avoid the pitfalls that I've done, and give advice to guys coming up in the real estate game. And so I think that's mostly how I give back is through that type of thing, like mentorship and talking to people that are coming up and just giving advice. That feels good, and that's fun for me.
So whether people are getting into flipping, either if they're in the Colorado market or not, but especially if they're in the Colorado market, they should reach out to you, talk about how they can do flipping and maybe how they can work together with you.
100%. Always looking to connect. Kyle,
so where can our listeners find you online?
I would say probably Facebook is the best place. If they look me up on Facebook, I try to do a weekly post of what we got going on as far as our projects go. And so I would say probably Facebook is the best place to reach out to me.
Thank you. And we'll have those we'll have those links in our show notes as well. So just a quick summary for our listeners. On today's episode, we talked about fix and flips. We covered market selection and a couple other real estate strategies you can use, and also the importance of finding the right partners so that you can build a successful team. We want to thank Kyle for joining us on the show today, and we want to thank everybody for listening to Retire Wealthy and Happy podcast. We hope to see you next time.
Hope you got value from this episode. And if you have a minute, then take the time to leave an honest written review for the podcast, because we take those reviews seriously, and it'll help us serve you better on the next episodes. And most importantly, be sure to start taking action so you can control your financial future today.